right, we are now being recorded, so mind your P's and Q's. So anyway, want to welcome everybody to today's happy hour. We obviously have these once a month on the first Wednesdays, and they go very, very well. We are absolutely delighted to have Frank Viscuso on with us today. If you're tuning in today, you already know who Frank is, but I'll tell you a little bit about him here in just a second, and we'll kind of be off to the races. Remember, as we go here over the next hour, the idea of these happy hours is that we get some interaction. So not too often do you have the opportunity to pose some direct questions to some of these fantastic folks that we have come on these events. So please feel free to do so. And we'll go ahead and get started. So I'm not going to read Frank's bio word for word. That's kind of silly, because if you're on this call today, everybody knows who Frank Viscuso is. But he's a retired deputy chief from Kearney, New Jersey, and the author of the Step Up and Lead series that's very, very popular. Very accomplished writer, accomplished speaker at all of the major fire conferences and all across the country. So we're absolutely delighted to have Frank here today. So Frank, I really appreciate you being here. And this is kind of a unique format in these happy hours. It's just kind of more of a around the horn kind of chit chat thing. But you've got a lot of content and a lot of things that you want to talk about. I had the opportunity to chat a little bit with Frank yesterday afternoon. Not really to establish a game plan, because we don't really want to come into these with a really rigid game plan. But he's got a lot of different things that he wants to talk about. And I think that conversation will lead us in a lot of neat directions. So Chief Van Dorp, unless you have anything else on the front end for us to get us kicked off?
No, it's Frank's show. Ready, set, go.
All right, fantastic. Let's do it. Frank, I'm going to kick it over to you. And you kind of take us off to the races in whichever direction you want to go.
Well, thank you. First of all, Brad, thank you. And I appreciate everybody having me on. I see some friends popping on, Steve Pegram, Tony Carroll. I see a lot of good friends that are coming on. So I'm excited to be here with all of you. And, you know, it's an interesting thing when I hear you talk, Brad, and you're saying Frank doesn't need any introduction. We had a conversation yesterday, and we were talking about this a little bit, and I kind of feel like, and I felt like this the first time I taught at FDIC, and I was just mentioning this on a podcast the other day. I felt like a little league baseball player that kind of snuck into the big leagues, and no one figured out I didn't belong there yet, right? You know, but in time, what happens is you start kind of finding your groove. You kind of find your voice, and being an instructor is all about finding your voice. I found mine. I'm not here as just a guest speaker. I'm a member, you know, just like all of you are, and I'm proud of that. And I want to talk a little bit about the membership and kind of what it means to me and what just the speaking and instructor community means to me. But I really want you to know this. It's very important. I have a few directions that I do want to go in for sure, but I really want to make this as interactive as we can. So I see everybody's kind of muted right now. I hope to see a lot of you unmute during this conversation and this time that we have together, so we could just kind of talk a little bit about some things. But just to start, hey, listen, being an instructor is an important thing. I'm looking at your program guide right here. In your program guide, this is what it says. We believe instructors have the power to transform lives. And well, I mean, first of all, just write that right there is important. We believe instructors have the power to transform the lives and well-being of fire and EMS providers everywhere. You have no idea how powerful of a statement that is if you haven't really sat back and thought about it. See, what we have as instructors is we have the ability to influence people. And when I talk about influence, I talk about the simple concept of you have their attention, whether it be for a 1 hour or a 30-minute keynote or 5 or 6 hour seminar. And for that time frame, you're ultimately bringing people on a journey with you, where you're going to teach them through stories and through lessons learned how to do things better. People are there to be educated. People attend a class because they want results. It's the only reason why they attend the class, unless they're ordered by their chief to attend the class. But people are looking for a better result. Our job is to provide them with a better result. And when we talk about attention, this is one of the things I've thought about early on when I started on my road as an instructor. And it was real simple. I go out to dinner one time many years ago, before I even met my wife. You know, I was actually on a date many years ago, and there was a waiter that was also a magician. I guess he was just a magician on the side, and I'm watching him take the order of the couple a couple tables away from us. And when he's taking the order, he does a card trick, a magic trick. And I watched that. I thought, that's pretty cool. When he comes over here, I'm going to ask him to do a magic trick for us. So he comes over to us, takes our order, and I said, hey, can you pull out those cards and show me the magic trick? He goes, hey, I could do one better for you. I could show you how to do the magic trick. I said, that'd be great. So he takes my hand by the wrist, right? He takes my hand and he puts the cards in my hand and he tells me what to do. And as he's doing this, I do this card trick and I'm like, he goes, now flip it over and your card will be on top, and it was. I said, that's remarkable. I mean, you taught me how to do a trick. I don't even know how to do it. He goes, yeah. He goes, hey, do you know what time it is? I look at my watch is gone. And I said, he goes, were you wearing a watch? I said, I was. And I started looking on the ground. He goes, is this it? And he was wearing it. See, when he held my wrist, he took my watch off my wrist and he put it on his own. And what I thought right there, which was really interesting, is how he took my attention and he put my attention exactly where he wanted it so he could kind of do what he wanted to elsewhere, and I wasn't focused on it. I never forgot that lesson. Matter of fact, as an instructor, I focus on that thought process of when I have their attention, it's so powerful that I have this incredible power to not just influence them, but to, like you guys say, to transform their lives through stories. And I take that very seriously. I know a lot of you do well. I've seen many of you speak. I'm friends with a lot of you. I know how passionate you are. And that's really the kind of, I guess, the foundation of a great instructor. So one of the things I want to talk about, and then I want to open this up for discussion, is some of the responsibilities of an instructor. And we're going to go over some do's and don'ts also, but some of the responsibilities. First and foremost, I want you to consider this. To be an instructor, like a fire level 1, level 2, I was a certified instructor in certain areas, certified in CPR, certified fire instructor, all that stuff. But to actually teach leadership or even tactics for the most part, people don't really need certifications many times. Yeah, train-to-trainer classes, they get train-to-trainer classes, but there's people teaching all over the country, you know them and I know them, that are not certified to teach certain things. And because of that, anyone can do it. And because anyone can do it, that opens the door for really good, talented, passionate instructors. But it also leaves that door open for people that may come in that maybe aren't really passionate or maybe shouldn't even be there. How many of you have kids that played youth sports? Probably most of you, right? And think about this, in youth sports, for a rec team, has your son or daughter ever had a coach that wasn't a great coach? Of course. And that's okay. They're volunteers. It's okay. But the point I'm trying to make is we owe it to ourselves, this community, and the people that are going to actually take time out of their day and give you that gift of their time. We owe it to them to actually give them the best product we possibly can, to give them the best service we can, and to provide value to them. And it's all about value. So I don't know if you've ever heard somebody say, if I can get through to one person, my time was well spent here today. You ever hear that? A lot of you have heard that, right? I've never said that, and I honestly never will, because I've never had a goal to get through to one person in a room. My take is this: if I have 150 people in a room, my absolute goal is to get through to 150 people. Now, I have no idea what part of my class is going to connect with them. That's why when I have enough time after every break, I bring them back in and I say, what's your takeaway so far? What's the sentence you heard that you felt you needed to hear up to this point? And I'd like to start that interaction, because I never know what direction somebody's life is in at that point. And I can tell you, I can take a class from any one of you right now. I could take a class tomorrow from any one of you. A year from now, I could take the same class from any one of you. You could say the same exact message, deliver it the same exact way, and I'm going to take something different out of it because my life's in a different place right at that point. So I take all of that into consideration. But my goal is this: I want to make sure everybody leaves there better. They have some kind of tool, some kind of idea, some kind of a game plan they can implement. So when they leave that room, they can immediately start, and I mean walking out the door, they could start doing things to improve and get a better result. That's one of my goals. You know, like, start doing this from this moment forward. Like that whole idea behind the 3 U's. If somebody's not doing something they're supposed to be doing, they're either unaware, unable, or unwilling. When people hear that and I explain it in detail during the class, they sit there and they go, that makes so much sense. And now they could start identifying certain people on their group that maybe shouldn't be in certain positions or need more training or are unwilling, which is boldly resisting authority or having a defiant attitude. I try to give them that stuff, and I want you to do that also. But keep this in mind. There's going to be times, and right after this, I want to open this up for discussion with all of you, but there's going to be times when you're giving classes and you're speaking, even at your own department, which I found even more difficult than any other department when I first started speaking. But you can be speaking to a group of people where some people sit there with their arms crossed, with their legs crossed, with their mind crossed. They seem to not really be engaged at all. I can't tell you the amount of times where I thought, I'm not connecting right now with some of these people. And maybe I will in the next hour, but I'm not connecting with them, only to find out those are the ones I connected with the most. So here's what happens one time. I'm out in Massachusetts teaching at the Fire Chiefs Academy there. And a guy comes up to me during a break, and he's a chief officer. And he says, can I talk to you? I said, yeah, of course. And he says, and he starts immediately hitting me with this negative tone and vibe, not about my class, but about a work situation. And he's saying, I work with these guys, they show me no respect. And he starts complaining about the union president and some of the other people in his department. They don't listen to me. They don't show me any respect. They go above my head to try to get things done, and I'm sick of it. And now I'm thinking, I have to get back in class in just a couple minutes. So I say to him, well, listen, right now we have to get back in class because we're starting in a couple minutes. Why don't you meet me afterwards? Let's sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and we'll talk about this. He says, yeah, all right. And I think he thought I was brushing him off. But we go back in class, and now I'm kind of keying in on him. And I realize, man, he's not engaged at all. He's just an angry person at this point in his life. So I do my thing. After class, I try to find him. He's gone. I don't know where he is. I don't see him. So I think, well, I guess that's it. Well, what happens is I'm thinking about maybe 6 weeks later, I get a phone call. I pick up the phone. He says, Chief Viscuso? I said, yeah. He goes, this is Chief so-and-so. I don't know if you remember me. I said, I do remember you out in Massachusetts. He goes, yeah, you remember me? I said, yeah, we met during a break and you were telling me you were having a situation with some guys you work with. He goes, I can't believe you remember that. I said, I do. I said, I looked for you after the class and you were gone. He goes, I'm sorry about that. I just wasn't in a good state of mind, but I want to tell you what happened. He says, during your class, I sat there, and you're right, I wasn't engaged. I had too much on my mind. He goes, but the days after that class, I was talking to another chief officer about the same situation I'm dealing with. And when I was talking with him, he says to me, he says, you know what, Chief, you don't want to hear this, but you're the problem. To which this chief officer is telling me on the phone, he goes, I got mad. He's telling me I'm the problem. I'm not the problem. He goes, but he says, you show them no respect. That's why they don't show you any respect. And you're never going to get better results if you don't change how you're dealing with them. He goes, I went to bed that night more mad than I've ever been at the thought that this guy would accuse me of being a problem. He goes, and then suddenly I thought about the one sentence in your class that I wrote down. And the sentence was, you can't fix a problem if you refuse to acknowledge that it exists in the first place. And I realized I am the problem. He goes, and it was real hard for me to come to that realization, but what I did is I realized I have to acknowledge that I'm at least a portion of this problem. So the next day I went to work, I called for a meeting with all these individuals, and I started by apologizing to them, saying, I'm sorry, I don't know how we ever ended up going down the path we're down right now. I've not shown you the respect you deserve. I apologize for that. I want to start clean. I want to have a great relationship, a great working relationship. I want to get things done together, and I'm asking you to forgive me. He says, Chief, our relationship has never been better. It's not perfect, but it's never been better. He goes, and I want to thank you for saying what you said that day. And that was one of the moments, guys, and ladies and gentlemen on the call, that's one of the moments that I thought to myself, you know what, even when you don't think you're connecting with somebody, you have the power to influence them. And you never know what's going to happen down the line, what's going on in their life and what that one sentence is. So stay focused on that. Now, I'm going to ask some people if they can unmute, and if you can give me your thoughts on what we're talking about right now. And then you can bring this in any direction you want to. You can ask me a question. You could just give me a comment, maybe share a story of something you went through. But I really want to hear from some of you. So I see Brad and Steven and a couple Stevens are unmuted already. Peter, anybody want to chime in?
I'll go first, Frank.
Okay.
Steve,
Hey, Steve.
Fire, pleasure to meet you. So I've been doing a lot of thinking lately. Up in Boston, we're trying to get together some officer development training, and I think leadership is a huge portion of that, because as I was in training for 2 years, I'm back out in the field, but you know, as much as we ramped up our training, we really only get to reach out as instructors, as official training instructors, to each individual guy maybe a couple of times a year. They could be on vacation, they swapped off, they missed this, they missed that, but the company officer has them day in and day out all year. And I think it's critical for departments to have their company officers understand that a large part of their responsibility is training their guys. And it's just, you know, they talk about an influence on a person, you know, they're the ones that they're looking to every tour. And so I don't know, I don't really have a point or a question, but just that the importance of the company officer as a training individual, and that they need to deliver the bulk of the basic training and the values, character, and attitude that the department wants, has got to start there.
Yeah, listen, those bars on the collar aren't for show. A lot of responsibility comes with that. To your point, Steve, I agree with you 100%. And those officers, I don't know what their journey was to becoming an officer. Like they may be some of the most educated firefighters that became officers, and maybe they just were great at taking a test. I don't know what their journey is or what the process is for them to get promoted, but there's a great responsibility that comes with that. So they need to, number one, educate themselves. And we could talk about that, qualities of a great instructor, but expectations need to be set for everybody. And I think a lot of that starts with the chief officers or the head of the organization actually setting those expectations. I'm working on a class right now I'm going to give just for tour commanders. And the very slide I was working on just before I jumped on this call was setting expectations and the importance of talking with your crew when you're a brand new officer, saying, here's what's expected of you. And of course, what they can expect from you. But a lot of that is your responsibility to prepare them. When I became a deputy chief, I spoke to my crew and I was very honest with them. I said, look, I don't think I'm any smarter, any more talented, or any more experienced than anybody in this room. The fact is, some of them actually helped teach me how to become a firefighter when I came on. But I told them, but I do feel that I understand my role as a tour commander and a deputy chief. My role is to do everything in my power to make all the best decisions I can to serve this community and get you home to your families at the end of every shift. And because of that, because you're my priority, because I know you put the citizens of this community number one as your priority, I need something from you in return. And I was very honest with them when I said, we don't train enough. And we actually set a standard right there that we're going to train a minimum of 3 hours a day. Now, I actually thought I was going to be met with incredible resistance, because that wasn't the culture we had at the time. But I said, I'm not going to look over your shoulders. I'm not going to micromanage your training. We're here for 24 hours. So the officers need to, we have new firefighters, we have new drivers. We need to get these people where we need to get them, all of us, as quick as we can, so we're prepared to do the job. And I actually had more buy-in than I had expected. And then about 2, 3, 4 years down the line, it becomes the norm of the organization. And all of a sudden, everybody's coming to work pretty enthusiastic about training. At least that's what I'm seeing. And I have officers, when I would talk to them in the morning and say, hey, you know, first thing I'd ask them is how their family's doing. How's your daughter doing? How's she doing her game? How's your wife? And then I'd say, what do you have planned for today? And that conversation always led me to believe, Steve, which officers I have that are tuned into the mission. Because some would say, hey, Chief, you know what? We're going to go down to the Oval today. We're going to raise the aerial ladder. We're going to do some rotations. We're going to advance some lines. I got an in-service inspection planned at this location at this time. Then we're going to do a KED drill tonight, or maybe some search down in the basement, whatever it is. I mean, they come with a plan. And by the way, when you have that, the best thing you can do is compliment that person and say, I'm proud of you. I'm very proud of you for your commitment, your dedication, and the fact that you come to work with a plan. Because when you praise, you tend to get more of the same in public. And so thank you for sharing that, Steve. Does anybody else have anything they want to share? Because the next question I want to talk about or topic is what makes a great instructor. So before I actually give some examples, maybe somebody can tell me what they think makes a great fire service instructor. I might put Tony Carroll on the spot right now because I'm looking at him there.
So I'll say something. I think you covered a lot right there in your first kind of welcoming and stuff. And I think what really drives me as an instructor is I don't want to waste anybody's time, right? And again, if you have a wide range of people there, whether it's a 20-year company officer to a 2-year or 2-day rookie, right? You have to not waste anybody's time. So I think you have to bridge that, and you know, that's where you could kind of call into that senior guy and get them involved. But that's my biggest concern about a class that you do at FDIC for 200 people, or you know, the 5 people that you're doing on a company, is just not wasting their time. And you know, can you speak to everybody? Can you kind of whatever they can take from your few minutes that you have with them? That's the biggest thing, and I guess that's the stress, right? That's the stress of being an engaged guy, of trying to get a point across. That's the stress that I could see instructors have. Again, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of
actually, it not only does it answer my question, I love it, because I mentioned earlier that when someone attends your class, that's a gift. They're giving you if they don't have to be there, and at FDIC, for example, they don't have to take your class. They could take any class they want. If it's a 1 hour, 45-minute class, they can go to any one that they want. And so they choose you. They're giving you a gift, and that's a great responsibility that comes with that. And I take that very seriously. I'm glad that you do too, and thank you for sharing that. Anybody else?
So I'm done, right? You're not going to call on me again?
You know what, Tony? You did your time, okay? I appreciate you. Tony was a great host, by the way. I was out in Washington one time, and we had a good time out there. I appreciate that time together.
Yeah, Frank got his message to like 10 people. We had like 10 people show up to the 2 days that we had, but he really hit it home with them, 10 people.
Well, I'll tell you, and you never know what it's going to be. And that's one of the things that I take into consideration too. When I show up somewhere, it could be 300 people, it could be 10 people, and it never makes a difference to me, because somebody once asked me, how do I get all my, and this is going to get a little bit personal right now, but this is why we're here, right? They asked me, how do you get all your speaking engagements? Because I speak, 40 to 50 times a year, and probably pass up on about 50 a year, because there's only so much time that I want to spend doing that, because I'm pretty active with my family. But I said, you know what? I don't really stress over it. I believe that I'm going to be where God wants me to be, and I'm going to deliver the message that I'm supposed to be delivering to the people who are supposed to be in that room. And I just I'm at peace with that. Now, that was not always me. I'm a guy that was always a pretty stressed out person in my life, because I was always I've stressed out over things I couldn't control, and I'm transparent about that in my classes. And by the way, this is part of what I want to talk about when we talk about what I feel are qualities that make a great instructor. And I'm sure a lot of you will agree. So I'll start this off, and maybe you guys can add to this, but trust, number one. I mean, listen, we're a tribe, right? And a tribe needs trust. So qualities of a great instructor are, I trust every one of you. I know if I bring somebody that like I see Mike Richardson there, if I have Mike Richardson speaking to my department, I have a lot of faith that the message being delivered is going to be a message that they need to hear, and one that I can put value in. Okay. I think a quality of a great instructor is also passionate. People who are passionate. people who are knowledgeable. They say what, it takes 10,000 hours to become a subject matter expert. I have no idea. I know I've spoke for more than 10,000 hours. I can tell you that much. I have no idea if I'm an expert. When people actually introduce me as a leadership expert, I correct them immediately. I'm not a leadership expert. I'm a leadership student. I'm still trying to figure it out, but at the same time, I have experience in the fire service leading teams. I have experience in sales and in business leading teams. I have business in sports as an athlete and as a coach leading teams. So I draw from all those experiences and share not just the things that I succeeded in, but the things that I failed in. And that leads me to another quality that I think makes a great instructor, which is somebody who's engaging, somebody who can tell stories from either their experiences or someone else's. It doesn't have to be your experiences. 50% of my stories may be my experiences. 50% are from other people, from stories I've heard throughout my time in the fire service, where I can let them learn from somebody else's experience. I think another instructor is, or another quality of a great instructor is just having great content, obviously, and a great reputation. Lack of ego, that's a big one. Humility is such a powerful quality. And I see some instructors, just some, and I'm not even talking fire service, I'm talking in life in general. Sometimes I see people in there that I think, well, they think they're maybe a little bit more important than they probably should think they are, because we're all in this together, trying to figure this out. But at the same time, I see in the fire service quite often a lot of humility. And I have a friend one time. I was talking to him the other day. He's a professional mixed martial artist. He fights for the UFC, and I said to him, a lot of the UFC fighters, we have 7 of them in my town that fight for UFC, not just MMA. They're UFC, which is the big show right there, right? But 7 in my town, and 5 of them are ranked top 10 in their weight class. So they're among the best in the world at what they do, and they're all very humble. And I asked one of my friends, I said, why is that? I mean, I think you guys are like, you fighters for a living. I'm thinking that you're gonna, you'd think you're something. You could beat up anybody you can't basically walk in front of. So I'm thinking that you'd have more of an ego. He says, Frank, maybe you don't realize this, but we get tapped out and knocked out regularly at practice, not just in front of millions of people when it happens on TV. He says, so it's easy to be humble when that stuff happens to you. And I thought, well, that's pretty interesting. And I thought, you know what? Humility is a great quality in life. I love grit too, but grit and humility together is potent. Another great quality of an instructor, or what makes a great instructor, street credibility, right? What's your street cred? I mean, if you're going to talk about, and I'm just saying leadership in general, this is my arena, I know, and many of you as well. But if you're going to talk about leadership, have you led a team? Are you currently leading teams? Because that's who I want to learn from. And because I want to know the experiences that you had. And I don't care if it's in a fire service or not. You could lead any team. I want to know what you know, if so I can leave there better than I came in. And on that note, attend classes yourself. And I encourage people all the time, if you attend classes, don't miss the conference by 15 feet. Because as instructors, and this will happen to all of you, I've seen it happen to many of you, where you're going from one room to another at a conference like FDIC, and people come up to you and start talking to you. It happens to me. It happens to Paul Combs. It happens to Anthony Castros. A lot of my friends, Mike Galliano, I see this happen to all these guys where they get kind of in a conversation, which is great. I love the meeting after the meeting. But when the class starts, make sure that they and you get in that class so we can get that education. So those are some quick, not even that quick, maybe it took a little bit too long, talking about qualities of a great instructor. But can anybody add to that?
Hey, Frank?
Yes.
Hey, so I wanted to kind of add on to that ego thing that you were talking about. So I don't know if you remember when you came and taught a class at our firehouse, but at our firehouse, we have signs at every single entrance and exit way that say dedicated and committed to duty, check all egos at the door. So the reason why we have that message at every single entrance and exit way is so that whether you have 1 minute on the job or 100 years on the job of being in the fire service, we just want you to know that you may have a good knowledge base and always have something to bring to the table, and it doesn't matter the amount of time that you have on or whatever title you hold. Everybody has something to bring to the table, And we want to remind you of that when you walk into this door. You have something to bring to the table for the community. You have something to bring to the table for your fellow firefighters. And it's just a constant reminder that we're all in this together when you enter those doorways. So I just kind of wanted to add on to that we have
I
a
love
special
that.
sign all over the firehouse.
Yeah, and to add to your point too, it's like the old Albert Einstein quote, everybody's a genius, but if you judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree, it'll live its whole life believing that it's stupid. Everybody has a specialty. Everybody has talent, skills, ability, knowledge. And also, if you are the smartest, most talented, most accomplished person in the room, you might be in the wrong room, in all areas. I like to think that every room I go into, there's an area that I can help other people improve in, but at the same time, I know for a fact that every room I go into, there's an area that everybody else in the room can help me improve in.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
right. So, and I do remember coming to teach with you. Thank you, Ryan. Anybody else want to add to that?
I don't know if I can add to it, but I want to, a couple of things that you said, Frank, and Steve mentioned as well, and others that really struck a chord with me because I had a very recent experience with this, is that don't underestimate the power you have as an instructor, as a leader, when you least expect it. And I'll tell the story. And the other part of that is how important trust is, and how important truth is to trust, right? Those instructors, those speakers that impact me the most are the ones that truly believe their message. And you can always tell that. And for me, that's what builds trust, is when I can tell, whether I agree or disagree, when I know you believe in the truth of your message, that engenders a lot of trust. And I was was essentially a fire dynamics class here a couple weeks ago, right? And I'm talking about all the research that's going on. And I speak to the other research that doesn't get as much attention, like into mental health and these other things, as part of the class. But it was essentially a fire dynamics class. And during one of the breaks, a young firefighter comes up to me and says, "I'd like to talk to you after the class, Chief." And I said, "Yeah, fine." So he gets me aside, and then it's, "Can we go find a corner somewhere, to talk in a room and close the door?" And now I'm like, what's going on here? Anyway, he thanks me. He says, "I trust you. You speak the truth." Those are like the first words out of his mouth or something like that. And he goes on to start talking to me about his struggles with depression, his attempts at suicide. And I'm thinking, holy shit, right? And then thankfully, he says that he just successfully completed the Center for Excellence program. He's on recovery. He's doing well, and he wants to find a way to share the message with other firefighters, right? And I'm like, thank God, right? Because I was not prepared to deal with this at all. All he's looking for is a connection, right? But out of nowhere, right? This guy who had no reason to trust me or to talk to me about this did, and I was able to help him out in an area, in a topic that I know nothing about. But because he believed that I spoke the truth, right? He trusted that I believed in my message, right? And that he could be frank with me. And that was just one of those, gut wrenching, things, but
Yeah.
it makes everything worthwhile when you have, and all of you have had that kind of experience where someone says, "You changed my life," right? "You've changed my career," whatever it is. And the opportunities, it happens when you least expect it. And so I think that message that you have about always being on your A game and always being honest and truthful and trustworthy is so important. It's so much more important than how big of an expert you are. People need to trust you, and when they trust you and when you're honest with them about your own limitations and those kind of things, then all other things are possible. And that's one of the things I like about your message so much.
Well, thank you. No, thank you for sharing that, Pete. And I just came in from Mont Belvieu, Texas last week. And when I got picked up by the airport, the person who picked me up was asking me, "Hey, what led you to get into teaching?" And we just started talking about it. And one of the things I said is, I said, I was not sure if my message would be received well. I said, but one of the things that I really enjoy is when people actually say to me, "You come in and you don't speak down to us. You speak on our level like you're one of us." And I told this person, I said, that has always been to me a compliment that that I really connect with, because that's what I always wanted, was people that never made me feel like they're above me, people that just say, hey, I'm with you, I understand you, I've been through this. Well, sure enough, after the first day of training, we're going out to lunch during the break, and the chief jumps in the car with us, and it's me, the person who picked me up at the airport, the chief, and somebody else. He jumps in the car and he immediately says, hey, you know what, I'm getting great feedback from this class. People are telling me that you don't speak down to them, it's like you speak to them on their level. And I turned to the person that picked me up in the airport, we just laughed. I said, but that's what I mean. You know, like, I mean, that's part of the instructor dues, right? You want to connect with them, and that's how you connect with people. You're the expert, you're the one that has the attention, you're the one in front of the room, but at the same time, you could be transparent about the mistakes you made, because a big part of leadership is telling people things you did right, things you did wrong. And Pete, I've had experiences like that too, where people talk to me about very personal things. And all I can tell you is I feel like maybe there's nothing more important in this whole world than somebody saying to you, thank you for the message, I needed to hear it. And I don't know how many of you have ever had that. I tend to believe a lot of you have had somebody come up to you at some point, emotional, after something that was said at one of your classes. You know, now if you're teaching tactics, it tends to not happen as much than if you're teaching, you know, leadership, team development, that kind of stuff. But let me talk about a few instructor dues, and I want you to add to them, and we'll continue this conversation in this process. But number one, we need to support each other. I mean, instructor dues comes down to, again, we're a tribe. We need to support each other. In the cancel culture that we live in, let's not become our own worst enemies. Let's be one of those groups that people see we have great strength, because we understand that we're all out there trying to make our society better, and not just the fire service, our society in a whole. If you improve the fire service, you improve the community, you improve a community, you improve the society. So be professional, posture and appearance wise. Be professional at all times. If there's a dress code, dress for that dress code. You know, I like to ask, what's a dress code? Sometimes you go to a department, they're like, you know, you could just, hey, jeans and a polo shirt are fine. I still don't dress in jeans and a polo shirt. It's very rare that I do that. I'll dress down sometimes, but only because they want me to, or they're okay with it, or I just forgot to pack my shirt, because that's happened before too. But at the same time, you know, be professional, be humble. We just talked about that. There's always room for growth. Admit when you made a mistake, even in a class. There's times I've said something and I realize, you know what, that wasn't correct. I've made a mistake, or even somebody may even bring attention to it. You know, I would give an example. I gave an example for 3 years until somebody said to me, you know what, your example doesn't make sense, and here's why. And I thought, oh my gosh, you're so right. It doesn't make sense unless I clarified it a little bit differently and set it up. It doesn't make sense. So I had to revise how I was doing things. And we laughed about it. You know, it's a mistake. I'm a human being. You know how many mistakes I've made in my life? I don't know, but I can tell you I've made one for every single day I've been alive, at least. That I can tell you. So we all make mistakes. Do be sincere when you're instructing. This is a goal that I've set for myself. And this is going to sound like an odd goal for anybody that maybe doesn't understand the passion that I'm talking about for the class that I personally teach. Every time I teach Step Up and Lead, or Step Up Your Teamwork, or one of my other classes in that arena of leadership, team development, and customer service, these are my goals. And this is through stories. I want to make everybody in that room laugh. I want to make everybody in that room cry. And I want to make everybody in that room commit. And I'm not kidding you. Those are my goals. Now you say, what do you mean make people cry? Well, because I have some heart-wrenching stories that I tell in my class. The point is, I could tell those stories without being connected to those stories, and the impact's not there. Or I could tell them like it's the first time I've ever told them. And so I put myself mentally in a position of like it's happening right then and there. And because of that, after a 5 or 6 hour seminar, I'm emotionally exhausted. I really am. I mean, I'm emotionally exhausted because I really tried to deliver this message to a point where it connects with people on that level. And I want to try to be interactive and connect with them and get their feedback. And that's why, again, I take a break. I come back after each break and I say, what was your takeaway up to this point in the class? and we take that moment to just talk a little bit about what they're taking away. And it always comes from one of those stories. It's either a sentence, a phrase, or one of those stories. Man, when you were talking about this, I really connected with that. And I realized that's something I got to work on. So great. So use stories. That's another do. And the last one I want to say is do make yourself accessible after the class. So you've probably all been here. You teach a class, not just at your department, you teach a class elsewhere, right? And somebody wants to talk with you after the class, but maybe you have a flight to catch. And because I usually fly out the night after my last class. So you may not have time to talk with them right there. So what do? Here's my card. Call me. I'm going to have an hour and a half sitting at the airport, and let's talk about this. Or here's my email address. I mean, I want to make myself accessible on social media, on email, over a cup of coffee if we have time right after the class. Because those people that are asking you for more time are the ones that need that time for one reason or another. And for the record, don't think that you have to have all the answers, because people will email me regularly, probably about 5 a week, where they email me with problems that they're having in their organization, maybe with a chief officer that's above them, maybe with a new firefighter that they're having a struggle leading, maybe with somebody that's at the same level as them, but is not engaged and not committed. And all I'm hearing is one side of the story, and I don't always have the answer of how to fix the problem. And doing it on email or text is so hard to do. So I say, here's my number, call me. And we just talk about it. And if I can help them, I obviously will. If I don't really have an answer for them, I tell them I'm not sure what to do, but I can tell you from what I know, this might be the direction that I think I would go in, but here's some books, or here's some other people you might want to speak to that have been down this road before that might be able to help you a little bit more than I can. We're a family. It's the most beautiful thing about the fire service. We're a family. I can go anywhere in the country, knock on a firehouse door, and they will treat me like I'm one of their own, just like you would in my community. And you should be able to be treated that way anywhere throughout the country. So let's extend that even further and make that an even better thing, because we're the voices of that family. We're the ones trying to make the fire service better all the time. So make yourself accessible, not just when you're teaching. So those are some do's that I wanted to share with you. We'll get into don'ts in a minute, but can anybody add to that?
Just something that I'll mention earlier, not necessarily an instructor do, but going back a little bit, when you first started, Frank, you talked a lot about transforming lives and about how the instructors had the ability to do that. And I think it's another thing that really struck a chord with me as you were talking about that, and Chief Van Dorp and some others as well, is the ability of the instructor from a very real perspective to change the trajectory of someone's career, right? When some young firefighter hears an instructor for the first time that is dynamic and is passionate and is, particularly knowledgeable about whatever they're talking about, they leave that class with that passion and enthusiasm has kind of rolled off to them. And so not only are they leaving that class with the content, but they're leaving that class with inspiration. And I think back on my own career and hearing, a name that jumps into my head is Tim Sendelbach. The first time I heard him speak, he's so passionate. He's such an incredible presenter. I left like, wow, I want to emulate that. I want to be like that. Similarly with the Chief Van Dorp and hearing some of his content on fire dynamics for the first time, I left the class wanting to go jump on a computer and learn more, right? And so transforming lives and transforming the trajectory of people's careers is something that I think is a very real possibility for instructors. And I'm going to take the liberty of putting somebody else on the spot for a second. I saw Damon Simmons is on the call, and I'm going to put him on the spot for just a second. He's going to be a new board of directors member here very shortly. And Damon, what are some instructor dues for you? What are some of the things that you think are some of the most important characteristics of an instructor?
He has to unmute also, so he may not know he's muted. And Brad, go ahead. While we're waiting for him, because we're looking to see if he unmutes, Mike Turpak did that same thing for me that you just talked about. He made me believe that, I could be an officer and a good one. And so it's amazing. See, people I think will rise or fall to meet an influential person's expectations of them. So for example, your children will rise or fall to meet your level of expectations for them. But the same thing can happen with people you're instructing. And you might just have one day with them. Yeah, and I'll share this story again, and because I see he did not unmute yet. But I'm at FDIC one time, and this isn't an instructor story. This is just to your point, Brad, to really drive this home because it's such a powerful point. I get a phone call, and I pick up the phone, and it's a guy that works on my department. Now, I don't work with him, but he's on my department, and I knew he was getting promoted to captain while we were down at FDIC. So I picked up the phone and said, hey, everything go as planned? You get promoted? He's like, yeah, that's why I'm calling. I said, congratulations. He said, thank you. I'm calling to say thank you, though, because you're the reason that I'm a captain. And I said, me? Why me? He says, well, I don't know if you remember this, but we worked together one day about a year ago. He was actually working on my group one day as a firefighter on a cover. And he goes, and you and I were sitting in the kitchen that afternoon, and it was just us talking. I said, yeah, I remember us talking. He says, yeah. He says, and you actually said to me, are you going to take the exam for captain? And I told you no. And you said, why? And his answer was, I just don't feel I'm ready for it. And he said, you built me up so much in that moment, saying, why we need a guy like you in that position. You'd be great for that. And if not you, who would it be? And, you know, we're losing a lot of talented people. And he said, I got so excited about that when I left, I went up to the room and we do the civil service exam. I applied to take the exam that day, and that day was the deadline. He goes, if we didn't have that conversation, I wouldn't be a captain today. And this is what he says. He goes, you changed my life. And I thought, wow. And so we can do that. Anyone can do that. See, that's not even an instructor story, right? But anyone can do that. But I don't know if Demond is with us right now.
That's okay. He might have zoomed out there for a second. And Chief, go ahead. Did you have something?
No, I was just going to point the finger at somebody else. I like to go after the lurkers here, you know.
Go for it.
They turn their cameras off, and Christine Tanetta has joined us several times, and I don't think we've ever heard boo out of her. So I'm going to see if we can get her to log back on or unmute herself, or, you know, you can still leave the camera off if you want to, but join the conversation. There we go.
Yeah, please excuse me. I'm still working and everything at the same time. I'm writing letters of recommendations and stuff for Chief to sign.
We only wish we could have saw your face when he called you out, though.
Oh yeah, I'm sure I was writing a note, but yeah, the people that I've just had recently a young lady in fire school, and she had actually wrote a paper about me. I had met her for maybe 10 minutes. Just, hi, how you doing? You know, talk to her a little bit about the fire service. Her dad's actually a battalion chief in our area, and she had no interest in being in the fire service. And the next thing I know, she's at Fire Academy. I've got this, her dad comes by and says, I need to show you this paper she wrote about you, and about me. And I was completely floored. It was, and it's one of my screensavers that I have up. It says, always, you know, remember, people are watching you. And it's a picture of us actually in the burn room, me pointing, you know, like, put the fire out here, and it's great. I remind my guys that too, like, you never know who's watching. Always be on your toes. So yeah, so those stories are great, and I thank you, Chief Viscuso. I mean, I've seen you numerous times, and you were an inspiration to listen to.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So Chief, what's you gave us a lot of great dues. What are some instructor don'ts?
Well, let's talk about don'ts now, and thank you all for chiming in and sharing here. So let's talk about some don'ts. Here's my first and foremost, because we're talking about the instructor community right now. Don't disrespect other instructors during your presentation or on social media. And I'm serious about this. I see it. I see, especially on social media. I'll see somebody post something on social media and somebody posts something that's kind of the anti what they just posted, and everybody knows they're doing it. And I see this division happening, and I'm like, come on, let Fox and MSNBC do that stuff. We don't need to be doing that stuff. We don't need to be attacking each other, because I've seen it, and you guys have seen it. You know, when the whole transitional attack, you know, terminology and concept was really being talked about a lot. I see people are like, oh, I'm on this side, I'm on that side. There is no one side or the other side. It's a tool. It's an option. You know, I was taught in 1991 a blitz attack, which is essentially the same thing as a transitional attack, just with more gallons per minute, you know? So, you know, we don't have to be at odds with each other, and we don't have to agree with everything either. But at the same time, just don't disrespect other instructors. Don't steal intellectual material and pass it off as your own. I see that a lot, quite often too. Don't be unprofessional. Again, ask what that dress code is and follow it. Here's a big one for me, and some people would disagree with me on this one, and that's okay. Don't use profanity or inappropriate language. I think we're trying to set a higher standard right now. And there are times that I sit in a class. I shouldn't say I sit in a class. You know what? Listen, if it happens in a class and somebody brings somebody into their department and that's the culture, that's the comment, that's the way they're talking, I'm not going to sit here and judge anybody. That's not what I'm talking about. But I see people live streaming seminars, and the instructor that they're live streaming, so this is open for anybody, is dropping F-bombs like they're going out of style. Like, yeah, I only got 20 more to use in my life, and I'm using them all in the next 3 sentences. And I sit here and I think, oh man, you know what? That's not what I want fire service instructors to be known for. And I get it. You know, hey, we're macho, we run in, everybody runs out. Let me just, I get it. I get where we're coming from, but at the same time, I don't think it's necessary. I just don't think it's necessary. Now, I'm a hot-blooded Italian with a temper from northern New Jersey. So every now and then my tongue beats my brain, okay? We all slip. We all make mistakes. I totally get that. But I don't think we need to make it such a common thing that we're doing it all the time. So that's my personal opinion on that. I don't talk off topic about controversial content. There's so much controversy out there that what my topic is when I talk about leadership, team development, and customer service. Okay, so here it is. When I'm talking about leadership, sometimes during my class, we get into a political portion of the class because we're talking about leadership, right? So, you know, people are or are not, depending on your point of view, leading this country the right way at any given time. So we may talk about that topic because it's a leadership class, but if I'm there talking about pump operations, it's not a time for me to get into talking about off topic about politics or religion or anything like that. Don't ridicule or disrespect students. Don't minimize students. And this is, again, this is a fire service culture thing where we sit around the table. If we find a weakness of somebody, in my department, if they found your weakness, forget it. They're going to exploit it to a point of no return. We know it. You know, that's the fire service culture, but that shouldn't be the instructor culture. Don't contradict acceptable safe practices and standards. And remember this, here's the way I look at it at all times. And I want to take this back to even some of the teams I coach. You see some of the, you know, baseball plaques and stuff I have. That's one of my favorite teams I've ever coached right there. All the kids signed a plaque for me, and it's one of my prized possessions more than anything else, is that right there. Those kids were 9 years old on that plaque. And I told them the same thing that I tell firefighters, grown men and women, and this is what I told them. Your uniform has 2 names on it. On the front, it's the name of your team, and on the back, it's the name of your family. Make them both proud at all times. And that's what I tell firefighters. Your gear has 2 names on it. The name of the department you represent, the name of your family. Make them both proud. And here's what I want to say to instructors. You're carrying the name of your department, the ISFSI, and whatever your own personal brand is, which is your name as well. Make them both proud. And let's go out there and do our best to improve the fire service and keep doing what you're doing. I'm proud of every one of you on this call for what you're doing, and the people that'll be listening to this when it's posted online as well. I'm proud of the members for being out in the trenches, because that's where we get things done. But does anybody want to add to that some of our don'ts?
I'm gonna find a lurker out there somewhere, Chief. Let's hear something from Paul Gallo. Are you there, Paul? What are some things that you don't like to see out of instructors?
And if Paul doesn't answer, I see Steve P is unmuted, so we're going to go with Steve.
The lurkers have always just left the building.
I
Steve,
think we need to.
are you there?
Can you hear me, Brad?
Yeah, go for it.
I don't like when I'm called out when I'm in class.
Come on, dude, you got to contribute something.
I couldn't resist that one. No, I think all of Frank's points were really good, and the do's and the don'ts. And the only thing I would add on the topic overall is I think it's so important for us as instructors to be students. And I fell into that situation where I was spending more time being an instructor than I was being a student. And 2 years ago at FDIC, I didn't teach. I didn't even put in to teach. After teaching there for 10 years, and I just went to classes, and it was the best FDIC I've been to in years. Just by being able to go and be a student again and sit in classes and enjoy that part of it, and making sure that you're being trained as much as you're trying to train others. I think that's really important, and we lose sight of that. You get to a pinnacle in your career where you're being asked to teach a lot, and you forget to be a student, and that's important too.
That's a great point.
Absolutely. So, yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I would throw one out there that Frank kind of brought up earlier, and sometimes some of the back and forth on social media or whatever is just jealousy or whatever the case can be. But I think we all have to make sure that we're approachable. If I'm doing something I shouldn't as an instructor, I sure as heck want somebody to approach me and say, hey, maybe this isn't right or maybe this isn't correct. And I think that goes back to being, humility and being humble. But I think, as Frank said too, we're a community. So I think we owe it to each other. If somebody out there maybe isn't, as Steve said, isn't up to date as they should be, and they're putting something out there, we have to all be willing and able to approach each other and say, hey, double check this, or hey, maybe this is going on. Because going back to, I think at times we can kind of fall into that rut that we can do no wrong or no harm. And we may not realize it, but something is missing or amiss. So I would throw that one out there.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Well, hey, as much as I hate to do it, we're going to have to kind of put a bow on this here as we get towards the top of the hour. Frank, I want to kick it back over to you for any kind of last words to wrap it up and send us home.
Yeah, well, listen, I could see several of you right now, so I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to show me, raise your hand if you have any critics. Raise your hand. Critics. Okay, good. Good. So let's get that out of the way. We all do. And by the way, for those of you who are not published yet, authors of books, if you really want critics, write a book, because they'll just come out of the woodwork. And that's okay. That's okay, because they only have power over you if you give it to them. But here's what I want to say about this, because this is another don't. Don't believe your own press. And if I could end on anything, that would be my thought, is don't believe your own press, because somebody may make you feel like you're a great instructor, and that's awesome. You can always get better. Somebody may make you feel like you're not a good instructor. That's okay. You can still always get better. But my advice would be, don't buy into either one of them, because if you ever think you're that good, well, that's a challenge in the fire service. Like we say, if you ever think you know enough that you don't need to continue learning, it's probably time to retire before you get someone hurt. Well, that can be said about instructors too. But we will have critics, and let's just not be the people that add fuel to the fire for critics. Focus on what you're doing. I like to keep my head down in this world where everybody seems to want to be offended by everything. What I try to do is stay focused on my mission. And what is my mission? Listen, we know what the fire service mission is: to reduce the loss of life and property and protect the weak. What I want to do is I want to add value to the lives of other people. And I do that through instructing, through writing, or through presentations. And I stay focused on that. And if every now and then a critic pops up, that's okay. It's just part of the game. I listen to them. I just never let them stop me from the mission. So I wanted to share that to end. Brad, I really appreciate you hosting this and kind of leading this conversation the way you did. Peter, thank you for having me on. I appreciate all of you. And if anybody has any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them as we're wrapping up here.
Thanks for being here, Frank. We really, really appreciate it. It's great. It's been one of the best we've had in a long, long time. So I just want you to know I'm going to steal the 2 names on the gear thing. I'll give you due credit, but I'm stealing it. That's just too good not to use. And then my last little bit is the conference is coming up this month, right? If you're not registered, get registered, be there. If for nothing else than the social aspect of it, be there. It's got a great lineup, a lot of good stuff going on. So I hope to see everybody there. Brad, it's all yours. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Well, I've got nothing else. Thanks all very much. We'll see you again for the next round of the happy hour at the beginning of next month. Thanks a lot.
Thanks,
Take
guys.
care, everybody.
See you
Well,
later.
everyone.
Thank you again.
Nice job, Frank. Thanks, brother. Yeah,
Thank you
hang-
very much. I appreciate all of you. I really do. Thank you for having me on. A lot of fun.
Yeah, these are good.
Yeah, I watched a few. You guys post them on YouTube. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All
it
right,
was
will you
nice.
be good?
It was
sorry?
nice to follow, but it's a little bit too short. But it was good to see and to follow the this conference. But a little bit question. I thought I heard you a lot about sending the message, but providing learning experience. I think that's much more the goal as an instructor. Sometimes I gave a lieutenant school, and I'm from the Netherlands, so we do something different than you in the United States. But my best classes I give, I don't talk anything. I only provide a learning experience to set them goals, what you have to do at the end of the class. This is what you have to do. This is objectives, and provide them tools to let them experience and learn by themselves to reach their goals, and let them make the mistakes, because I'm a strong believer. I can tell you something and okay, yes, that's good, but experience the thing that's the much more greater to learn than telling you how to do how to row a hose or fold a hose, or doing your command skill. So that's the best class I give. I didn't teach anything. So that's,
yeah. Well, see, but you did teach. What you're saying is you didn't teach through your words, and you taught through your example, and it's a hands-on class, and that's awesome. It's the way it should be.
And American Fire Service, we're getting better at it, but we have a long way to go in getting better at that more Socratic sort of approach to instruction. And it's very, very valuable. You're absolutely right.
And I'm a strong believer. I was also first telling the story, and I'm the instructor. I know what you should do, and having a good story and make them laugh and cry and commit. But changing my own beliefs to provide them learning experience by helping them, guiding through their way. It's much more valuable for them and for me to have a good class, and even with hands-on classes, or also with teaching theory or fire dynamics, or
well, yes, and see, and the instruction you're talking about is a little different than the class that I'm talking about is it's a leadership seminar that's in a classroom setting as compared to hands-on. I agree with you 100%. When it's hands-on, I'm going to explain to you what to do, but we have to get our hands dirty. We have to get in there and we have to learn. And I don't want to just show you what to do. No. I can show you once and then we could do it together, but then I want you to show me. So yeah, I'm with you on that 100%. Well, thank you for joining the conference today. I really appreciate
You're welcome. It's late in the Netherlands, so.
Oh, yeah. Well, have a good night's sleep, my friend.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks again, Frank. You can see it. That'd be great.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Take care, buddy.
Take care. Bye now.
Bye.